You're strapped to your parachutes.
Hey, where's yours?
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the speediest episode of Backlot Banter. Today, we're talking about a movie maybe longer in production than any other movie we reviewed on this channel. And today, of course, I'm joined by my quick as hell co-host, Tanner Dykstra, and we're going to be talking about The Flash. You guessed it. You're all seeing it, maybe. I don't know how it's going to be doing at the box office. We've yet to arrive at that destination. But if you want to talk to us about the end of the DC extended universe, you can join us in our Discord. That link is in the top description. And while you're down there, leave a comment telling us how many of the DCEU movies you think are good. I don't want to know what they are necessarily, but what there's like what 13 of them, something like that. Yeah,
somewhere around there.
And tell me how many you think are actually enjoyable.
Yeah.
But of course, you know, also subscribe to the channel and ring the bell and all that stuff. It's YouTube. Come on, YouTube. You know what to do.
Get with the program. Get with the program here, folks.
Yeah. And if you're not, you're behind. You know, you're lacking.
You're slow.
The world's moving on without you.
It's true.
Yeah, catch up.
Yeah.
Tanner. Yeah. We've seen The Flash.
It feels weird to say.
Exactly. It's not a sentence that it is a sentence I thought I would say, but it's not a sentence I would have been much excited to say because it's been such a wild ride. But you have also seen The Flash, and I don't know what you think of this because you've been a careful.
I've been tight-lipped.
Cassie, I don't know. Yeah, you didn't say much.
Okay.
What do you think about The Flash?
Tucker, I think The Flash is a bad movie. Oh, if you can believe it. I think that it's flawed in many regards, and I'd kind of be hard-pressed to come up with redeeming factors. I think there are some there. I think it had potential. As we mentioned, this film has been in development for upwards of 10 years. And I'm sure that there's a lot of different DNA of different ideas, different creators in this film. But when you have the final product, as we do here, it's just not very good. Like, I think maybe the worst sin it commits is that it's just kind of boring and like doesn't do anything that grabs me, you know, especially in its characters, in its storyline. I'm like, yeah, it's kind of unfortunate, you know, this was supposed to come out in like 2018 or something like that. And now we're in 2023. The multiverse idea has been done. It's been done better. True. It's been done better within weeks of this movie's release.
Yes.
And that
very unfortunate for this movie.
It's an unfortunate set of circumstances, but at the end of the day, you had 10 years. You probably could have made a better movie.
No, that's very true, and I think it's very fast. This is going to be a movie that will be studied till the ends of time because it's a movie whose own marketing cycle and development had no business being as complex as they are. I mean, superhero movies get made in 2 years and get pumped out constantly. I mean, that's the bread and butter of our industry for the last 15 years. And this is like the one exception that has just taken forever and they didn't know what to do with it. And it's like, come on, guys. The Flash is one of the oldest superhero characters. I mean, the Flash started the Silver Age of comics and revived the superhero comic book industry. And you couldn't pull together a Flash movie in a couple of years. You had to keep assigning directors.
Apparently not.
Who the hell knows?
So what do you think?
But I disagree.
Okay.
I think this is a great movie.
Okay.
And I am easily able to find where my criticisms lie because I think they're pretty apparently obvious. But I think that if a DCEU film that feels focused, that feels personable, that feels creative in places, and makes me excited to see what's going to happen next, except for maybe not, because maybe there won't be a happen next for this one. I was pleasantly surprised at the amount of fun I had, at the amount of fun that everyone in the theater around me was having. There was a lot of giggling, a lot of cheering, and at the end of the day, I'm like, yeah, they they actually did it. They scraped it together and they made a great movie.
Yeah.
And
But
it's
Tucker,
easily one of the best DCEU movies, in my opinion.
Is it one of the best superhero? Is it the best superhero movie ever made? Is my thing.
No,
yeah.
According to David Zaslav
and James
Tom
Gunn,
Cruise
all these people are
these
talking about
jackasses.
how great this movie is, and this is something I want to get into. Is that I can see the creative ideas in here. I think they are few and far in between. I think they're sparse in this film. From things like the Speed Force and how it's portrayed. That very first thing, which we see in the trailer of like this like super accentuated vertigo effect that's done when Barry's about to start running. I'm like,
cool.
That's a cool Speed Force effect. But then we drop it for the rest of the movie. We
true.
never do anything like that ever again. And the rest of the Speed Force stuff is glorified Quicksilver stuff, which is they beat him to it. Quicksilver in the Fox X-Men movies beat them to like super speed scenes, and the rest of the Speed Force stuff is just stuff like that, but with crazy CGI lightning just everywhere. I'm like, where are the creative ideas for the rest of the movie? Frankly, for that Speed Force stuff.
Yeah, I think what's interesting about how they use the Flash's powers in this is it's better than I expected, but I don't think it's as... I absolutely agree that it's not as good as it could be, but it's because of a few key reasons that I think ultimately end up making this a more unique and more focused film, which is, we don't have a villain in this movie, which I think ends up working for this film being incredibly focused. We're not cutting away to what the villain is doing the entire time. We're not thinking about multiple groups of characters that are like split up and like trying to figure out things on their own across the planet. This is really about Barry and Barry figuring shit out, and Ezra Miller bantering with each other. And not having a villain would have easily played a lot more into being a lot more speed things, him running, a villain running. Okay, we're going to be using these effects a lot more often. But instead, they opt for no villain, which I as I said, I think strengthens the core of the movie and allows the characters to feel more grounded, as I think they do significantly more than almost any other DCE movie, which you can agree or disagree with. But I think also the idea of making this both a multiverse story that grows the Flash character that we've seen a few times in a few of the films, but not to a significant degree where they had character development or like personality necessarily, and acting as a Flash origin story as well. And I think both of those elements are handled very well, but because they're inverted and clashing in ways that maybe we didn't necessarily expect, it means that we're not using Speed Force stuff and talented, experienced Barry Allen running a lot, because he gets his powers taken away, and then we have to have the other one learn how to use the powers. But those, I think, are the strongest elements of the film. Watching experienced Barry Allen kind of come to terms with learning to reintroduce himself into the world and like figure out how he's gonna do shit, and like, okay, I gotta Google and like do stuff instead of just running there, I think ends up really working for that character. And having the younger Barry Allen learn how to use his powers is very entertaining, and it comes with some of the best scenes in the movie. So I will take the sacrifice of not as much creative, speedy stuff as they could have done for, I think, the other elements that end up do strengthen this movie's characters and pacing quite a bit.
Yeah. So you said a lot there, and I want to drill into the story and our two main characters, which is really one main character, Barry.
Yeah, but it really is two main characters. I think they're different enough to where we have to specify very clearly.
Sure. I would disagree. That I think that they're not different enough to matter really, because what I heard about this movie going in is that we see Barry 1, let's call him, and he is more mature. He has aged. He is not the character we saw in BVS and in Justice League and Zack Snyder's Justice League. And that's not really the case.
Saw in BVS.
Yeah, and that's not the case. He's still he's still super annoying and childish and like doesn't fully grasp what he's doing at all. Like, I don't see the character development from 2015 or 2017 until now, because then we go to Barry 2 and I'm like, okay, how are we going to differentiate these two? And it's Barry 1 just stops being like his childish annoying self altogether, and
Yeah.
that is reverted to Barry 2. I'm like, okay, so we just like cut off that kind of characterization because it's time for Barry 2 to take that role.
Yeah.
And also, this is purely subjective, I feel. I just found them very annoying. I just found
Sure.
Ezra Miller's performance to be A, very annoying, and B, not
Mm.
very good altogether.
Oh,
Yeah,
interesting.
and I found the plot to be tedious, frankly.
Sure. Well, I think we should stick on our berries.
Okay,
first.
let's take that.
Because I find myself disagreeing about almost every point you
Yeah.
said, because when we are introduced to to the berry that we've known and loved
Yes, of course.
for all these years, which was a half-assed character in other movies that I hated
Yeah.
every time
Yep.
I saw the Flash show up. I'm like, God damn it, Flash is one of my favorite DC characters.
What's
I can't believe they fucking
brunch?
did
What's
him
a
dirty.
brunch go? What's brunch? I don't understand.
Really fucking stupid. But I think that when we are introduced to Barry here, getting a couple scenes to ease us into a Barry Allen that maybe you're right hasn't completely matured in the way that maybe some people were indicating before the movie came out, but is significantly more experienced with his powers, how he's using them in different situations. He knows that he can go into the bathroom and run out and do some things and then come back, and he's on the phone with Alfred and he's communicating with Bruce. These are elements that we didn't get to see the Barry that we knew from Justice League have, because Barry from Justice League had only been Flash for like, I don't know, a month or whatever, and had never been introduced to Batman and Alfred and saving people on a large scale and stuff like that. That I think is a more experienced, more mature Flash that I think makes him a more compelling character, because he's got this really unique place in the DC universe where Alfred calls him up when no one else is around, and the other superheroes are like, oh, whatever, guess we gotta put up with him, and he's just trying his best, and he's balancing being across the country with trying to get his breakfast on time. I think it's a really compelling, a very fresh way to introduce us to one of the first real origin stories, or like humanizing origin stories, classic style origin stories, like we've seen with Miles and Into the Spider-Verse, with Tom Holland's Spider-Man in Homecoming, with Tony Stark in Iron Man 1. That scene really felt to me like we're getting to know the life of Barry Allen, and I think that he does feel significantly different from what he did before, because we're able to see his life. We're able to see why he's as nervous and fidgety and kind of unable to properly communicate with others as he is. And I liked sitting in that life. And so when he gets completely fucked over and gets sent into another dimension, has to deal with his other self, I think that is a sobering moment for him, which is why I think he turns on a dime. I agree with you. It is a very quick change, but seeing how other people see himself, as he explicitly makes, like, oh, Jesus Christ, this is what people fucking mean when they call me annoying. That, I think, makes a lot of sense and differentiates the two characters enough in my brain to where when they're having arguments, when they are having different emotional moments, reacting to different scenarios in different ways, I feel like it is completely two different characters. And to me, Ezra Miller's performance as the two Barrys is the heart and soul of this movie, and one of my favorite performances in the entire DCEU, because Barry Allen feels personable. Barry Allen feels like a person with issues, like a Marvel character. Honestly, it is so rare for us to get DC characters that have lives and problems and balancing and crushes, and we got that now. And Barry Allen's just a nervous, fidgety guy with issues. And it sold me so much on being invested in the stakes here, which as we'll get to, I think are really ham-fisted, but ultimately end up working because I care so much about Barry Allen, and I think they did a really good job at establishing Barry's world, and then Barry 2's world as well.
So the adjectives we've used to describe Barry thus far are nervous and fidgety, and those aren't exactly like compelling character traits for me. And really? I think a lot of what you said is just plot surface deep. There's nothing characterized about Barry, and I think that's due to the fact that every scene that's not pushing this multiverse plot forward is so transparently expositional about where we're trying to, what character arc we're trying to force Barry down as quickly as possible, so we can see Michael Keaton, or we can see, or we can get to any of the number of other things that we get. I think specifically to the flashback that we get of Barry and his family when he's young. And every line of dialogue is just, to me, is just so...
I didn't like that scene very much.
just so, we're a happy family.
I love you too. I love you more. I'm like, shut the fuck up, shut the fuck up.
We're a happy family. Da-da-da-da-da.
Yeah,
Barry,
yeah,
you can't solve every problem. God, I love my family. Da-da-da-da-da. Hope they don't die. Like, I'm like,
definitely.
okay. So I'm searching for the heart. I'm searching for what feels real here. I'm searching for what's not just... throwing exposition at me so I can understand what the character arc of the Flash is going to be. I'm searching for what makes him feel personal, what makes him feel like a real character. Like, and I don't want to keep bringing up this comparison, but like everything in that first hour of Across the Spider-Verse.
Sure.
And I don't find it. It's like cotton candy in a river, if you will.
Yeah.
Every time we try to get something, I'm like, okay, I'm starting to like this. I think I see what they're going for. Then they're like, we speed through it. It's lazily written and it's gone. Yeah, I had another point. The interaction between the two Barrys, I think, is also an issue for me, because I feel like we're just playing this dynamic on loop. There, sometimes literally, sometimes I counted 2 or 3 interactions, which I think are supposed to be these like emotional high points for their characterization, for their relationship, where it's Barry 1 says, you don't appreciate thing that I know. Barry 2 says, my mom is alive actually, so things are different. And Barry 1 says, oh right. There's multiple interactions to that effect, and I feel like we never get past the most surface level reading, most surface level idea of what this relationship can and should be.
Okay, well, talk about the dynamic a little bit, because I still think I do disagree with some of the lack of scenes. I think I'm holding this cotton candy just above the line.
Okay.
All right, it's not melting yet. I've got it in my hands. It's kind of sweet, but the dynamic between them, I think, from my experience, does progress enough to where the scene progression and the way that they're talking to one another and the bond that they end up creating over the course of, I don't know, a couple days. Yeah. It's not really clear how long they're actually in this universe, and the background stakes are high enough to where I feel the tension for Barry 1 to figure things out, and Barry 2 not understanding the stakes or his powers is very frustrating to Barry 1. And watching the two of them grow and change and impact one another, I think is actually very compelling. And I think not super well done, but well done enough to where, again, I felt that these were distinct characters and I enjoyed their personalities enough.
I want to talk about the characters changing, because I don't know if they do.
Okay.
Because, and this is full spoilers, I guess. We'll say full spoilers from here on out. Why not? We haven't talked about anything spoilery, actually. Barry 2, young Barry, dies.
Yes.
He starts to become Dark Flash, or whatever we want to call that entity.
I don't know what that character is. No.
As you mentioned, Tucker, there's no Flash villain in here, so we don't really know. I don't know. So young Barry dies. And the lesson that Barry 1, old Barry, is supposed to take is just served up to us on a silver platter multiple times. It's that you can't change the past, some tragedies have to happen, and you gotta move forward.
Yeah.
Except that at the end of the movie, he still saves his dad.
Yeah. That was a weird moment, because also I didn't realize necessarily what had happened there. Because it didn't show him putting the tomatoes on the top can. And then his lawyer was like, due to the cleaned up footage. I'm like, that doesn't make any fucking sense. Like, what are you talking? But okay, he moved the cans. So his dad looks up, and like maybe that's a minor enough thing to where it doesn't really...
Was putting the can of tomatoes in his mom's cart not a minor enough thing? Like, where's the line here? It's just so, like, we have the lesson of the movie, and then Andy Muschietti or Barbara Hodson, I believe, is the credited main writer of the film, just slaps it out of, let's say, Alfred's hands. Maybe Alfred's serving it up to us on a silver platter. It happens a number of times, and since we are in spoilers, I feel like it's time to talk about the elephant in the room of this film, the initial leaks of this film, which is where I feel we slap that theme, that lesson, out of the hands of Alfred once again.
Okay.
The cameos, if we can call them that.
There are a few that I would consider not cameos. I would consider core characters to the movie, which are the ones on the poster, which is Michael Keaton's Batman and Sasha Calle's Supergirl, which I would contend are very well done. However, and I think we'll get to those because I would consider those more characters. The cameos in this movie, I'm iffy on.
Okay.
I think that at the beginning, I don't know if you consider these cameos, but having Batfleck and Gal Gadot as Wonder Woman and Jeremy Irons as Alfred, I think those are very well implemented. Frankly, I think that's the best Justice League stuff I've seen in this universe.
Yeah, not a high bar.
Exactly. But I did enjoy it, and it felt very natural to this world. And I was actually really surprised to see how much screen time and interaction they got, because it felt like a continuation of what came before, which is what the DCU is not good at and never does once. But when we get to the Chrono Ball section at the end, and I would also consider Zod not necessarily...
No, he's not a cameo.
He's kind of
you know what I'm talking about when I say the cameos.
They imply that the DC multiverse exists, which is sure. I kind of put two and two together, and by doing so, instead of doing what Marvel has done, and I think done much better and more realistically, by referencing their other universes that were in live action, by featuring the characters in similar but smaller roles, down the line, actual people in actual suits, so then it's an actual pop when they got the actor to come to set and do this for the first time in 15 years, because they haven't been this character since the fucking 90s. That's interesting. But Rotoscope creating, like, 4 different characters...
Not even Rotoscope, just ghoulish CGI puppets of these beloved people who played these beloved characters, and just kind of making a marionette dance around for our enjoyment.
Well, they kind of glide
they just glide in
on their animation frames. They're like, and then their faces are rotating in a way that doesn't look quite right. And you're like, oh, what the hell is this? So they bring back Christopher Reeve, and whoever played Supergirl. I've never seen that movie. No one has, so I don't fucking know. And then they also do Nicolas Cage as Superman, which is bizarre because Nicolas Cage is still a current actor, and you didn't need to do a weird half-assed rotoscope animated version of him to have that be a pop. And frankly, I think conceptually, cool. Okay, fine. It's an Easter egg. It's a reference to, like, if you know film history and you know whatever. It could have been cool. But I think that the way that's implemented with the CGI, as I certainly want to get to, is bizarre. And it makes it feel like a first draft. Like, okay, we've got it's like the storyboard version. It's like, okay, we've got these characters here. This is the idea, right? Where these other worlds exist. All the stories that you've been watching since you were a kid. Fucking Adam West Batman, Christopher Reeve Superman. This is all a thing. It's awesome, isn't it? And then you would take a couple more months, flesh them out, make it look a little better, integrate it a little better into the story. We're watching, like, the first draft version of this. Yeah. Like, the bare bones idea with, like, they whipped it up in fucking, I don't know, animation program Blender in, like, 2 weeks, and they're like, okay, this is awesome, right? And then I'm like, it could be, but it doesn't work out because what the fuck are you doing?
What the fuck are they doing is the question I ask. And there's been lots of discussion about this on Twitter. If you run in the right timelines like I do,
I was not spoiled on anything.
Yep, that's impressive.
Flash, just for
it's
context.
Very impressive.
I did not know any of this, so I was very surprised.
And I'm okay that I got spoiled on these cameos because I concur with a lot of what I've seen is that they are like. It's ghoulish, it's disgusting, it's so transparently like, please clap for this.
Definitely.
Cameo people you recognize. Please,
Yes.
just like resuscitating the corpses of George Reeves, of Christopher Reeve, of Helen Slater, who also, in addition to Nicolas Cage, is still alive.
Yeah.
Nicolas Cage
Yeah.
and all these
Mm.
people. I'm like, why are we doing this? What? Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm reminded of No Way Home, a movie that the tide is changing on. If you ask certain people in our community,
Yeah.
certain
Yeah.
BLV hosts, and like Andrew Garfield and Tobey Maguire came in and they impacted the storyline. They helped Tom Holland understand his role as Spider-Man better and all this stuff. And
Yeah.
the cameos that we see in the Chrono Bowl are purely just so ghoulishly transparently like, cool thing you recognize, like our
Yeah.
movie maybe more?
Yeah. Yeah. And the interesting thing is, I think there was an easier way to do it that gets that same kind of impact, but doesn't leave that sour taste in your mouth, which is frankly what they did with one of the cameos, which is Adam West's Batman world is shown in this movie, but in the chrono ball flickering, spinning kind of way, and it's just footage from the fucking Batman TV series. And if they had done that for the other worlds, if they had shown Christopher Reeve's Superman buzzing around with a framey kind of effect, that could have been cool, and it would have implied that Christopher Reeve's Superman exists out there in the multiverse, and these stories are connected and exist sort of in that same bubble, but without the ghoulishness that I think makes it have a weird taste. And I just wish that they had sort of stuck with their what they knew would actually work in the context of a live action film, which is I don't know really what other characters they could have brought back, but like Ryan Reynolds was Green Lantern at one point. Brendan Ruth was Superman at one point. They are still alive.
Brendan Routh in Superman Returns plays Christopher Reeve's Superman.
Yeah.
Like, he's still alive. He still looks like he could play Superman. He just recently was playing Superman on the CW. Just get him. Get Grant Gustin, a man.
Please, for the love of God.
Man who for the last 10 years has been pumping life into the Flash like the DCEU could never do. Okay.
Yeah.
I watched the first couple of seasons of the Flash. I fell off. I keep seeing clips on my timeline. It looks like trash.
It's fucking stupid.
But
yeah.
people still watched it, and people like Grant Gustin's The Flash. And guess what?
Yeah.
If you brought in Grant Gustin's The Flash, the Barrys could talk to him and learn about being the Flash, instead of this movie being weirdly obsessed with every other DC character other than the Flash.
Yeah, I find it very interesting that this movie is used as the DC Celebration movie. We're showing you our history. We are implying that everything's connected. There's a little bit more connective tissue now between all of these things, something that DC movies have had a terrible job doing, even as they've been coming out in a regular clip over the course of the last decade. But it is, I think, focused on the Flash enough for me in its plot, in its characters, to where it doesn't feel like they're leaving the Flash behind. I was worried about that going in. It's like, because you see the fucking poster that's mostly Batplane and Batcave and tiny Flash, and then I'm like, oh Christ. But I think that, and I kind of want to shift to Michael Keaton Batman and Sasha Calle as Supergirl, the way that they are implemented into the story, and elements like Wayne Manor and the Batcave and that kind of technology and Kryptonian lore, I think are present enough to where I feel like they are interesting subversions of what we knew before. They are they kind of make sense for this new world that we've appeared in, but they don't overshadow the Flash's story enough for me to be like, oh god damn it, they're really fucking doing it. I thought they were very well integrated, and one key scene I would point to is one of the more emotional sequences in the film. I know you might laugh at Scott for giving me an idea.
Lay it on me.
But when Barry wanted to have that argument, that emotional moment where Barry 2 is like, "What? Mom gets me these monkeys all the time." He doesn't quite understand, and Barry 1's just like, "No, you don't understand. You don't appreciate what you have." And I thought that moment was very well done, and I was so focused on their dynamic and the progression that the two of them had, and the differences in this conflict that was bubbling up, that them being in the Batcave was not my focus in that scene. And watching Barry 1 experiment with technology, and we get to see his scientific side and get to see his sort of research side, is is what I'm focused on in that scene. I'm not focused on the fact that he's doing it on the Bat computer. That's just kind of a nice in-world touch that I enjoyed. So I really did like the way that they implemented these Bat and super elements that I think ended up really supporting the core of the story, which to me still is Barry Allen as the Flash and Barry Allen as the Flash.
Sure, but and going back to that dynamic, and I do want to talk about Keaton and Kaye,
yes,
in a moment. But like, just to sort of reiterate, those arguments happen, and they happen a number of times, but I don't feel like we interpolate them into anything meaningful for either of the characters. As I said, the last decision that Barry 1 makes is still similar to the very first inciting incident. Like, what does he learn? How does he change?
Yeah.
And Barry 2 dies before almost becoming Dark Flash, let's say. So I don't know how our characters grow or change or anything. And I feel like it's sort of sidelined for primarily hanging out with Michael Keaton again. And let's talk about it. Michael Keaton is sleepwalking through this movie a little bit, I think. I think so.
Oh, I disagree.
I think that he's not really giving it his all. Michael Keaton's a charismatic guy, and sometimes it comes across. But from the very first moment we saw him in the trailer, and he whips out the Batman, and does a half a smirk. I'm like, Michael Keaton's getting a paycheck, and I never really got over that feeling here.
Interesting.
The conclusion we're meant to come to with Michael Keaton's Batman, because we are told that Gotham City, one of the safest cities in the world now. He finished his job as Batman, and he's just chilling in Wayne Manor now. And the last line we get from him, after killing him a couple of times as the Barrys try to go back and save everyone, is, "Thanks for letting me be Batman again." And to me, and maybe I'm just being cynical because of I knew what was coming in just a couple minutes in the Chrono Bowl. It's just another thing of like, hey fans, we know you wanted to see Michael Keaton as Batman again, and guess what? The character of Batman, he wants to be Batman. He loves being Batman for you, and he loves putting on the costume, and he loves flying around in the Batplane, and we love playing the Batman theme so many goddamn times and blaring it so loud for you.
They do play it a lot. Yeah, that's interesting. And maybe it is just a difference in cynicism / the information that we were bringing in when we went into the film. Because I thought that his Batman, I don't think he was sleepwalking. I think he brought a lot of energy to this movie. I thought he had a very unique, more haggard performance that was a different side of Batman that we've never been able to see before. This was kind of almost the sort of Dark Knight Returns comic book version of Batman that doesn't really want to be Batman anymore and is kind of struggling to understand his place as a revered character because he was the only superhero in this universe, which I still think is a very interesting context for a DC universe to take place in. But I really liked watching him be hesitant to explore these ideas and fight back kind of or push back against the Barrys being like, we need your help. And he's like, I don't really know if I'm that same person anymore. And I think that he comes to that realization that he can still be of help, and that even though he's just a lonely old guy drunk as a hog and painting fucking cherubs and
listening to 25 or 6 to 4, the needle drops in this are just mind-boggling. Side note, there's a lot of weird needle drops. I was like, why do we need a needle drop here? I don't know. But, sorry, keep going. I just wanted to get that in there.
But his context as a unique Bruce Wayne and coming back to that he can still be useful in his older age, I think is actually pretty powerful for who that character is. And I think it gives him a distinct enough personality as a Batman, which we've seen more of people playing Batman on the silver screen than any other character. And this felt distinct to me. I don't know if it's actually supposed to be the original universe, like Tim Burton Batman. It's the same guy.
It's the same thing. Like, we are meant to believe it is.
But in the canon, I don't know. I overthink this shit. But I do like where this version of Batman landed. I thought he was implemented very well. I think his dynamic with the Barrys is a lot of fun. I think it's very distinct. And when we get that line at the end, I agree that there is a reading of it that is more cynical. And I think you explained that well. But for me, it was more on this character's side, him feeling like he had finally been given a chance to fulfill a purpose that he had been longing for but hesitant to reach for again. And I thought that was actually really well done. And in the context of that crazy last action sequence, which is conceptually great, but in weird in execution, I think it actually worked very well and had an emotional moment there and a closure for that character, which I guess I'm kind of surprised that we saw, considering I thought they would just like move on from it. But I actually quite enjoyed Michael Keaton's Batman. I thought he was very well implemented.
Sure. Last thing I'll say on that note, and then we'll talk about Sasha, and then you reminded me to talk. We need to talk about
CGI.
how it looks.
Yeah.
My thing is that we are told that Gotham is crime free, and that is the
weird.
purpose of Batman. Is to
Sure.
he wants to save Gotham, and then the dark side of it is that he's addicted to being Batman. And I feel like we feed into that as like a good thing when that's always been the negative element of Batman's character.
Okay, I can see
But
that.
anyway, Sasha Kaye. I think my main problem with her characterization of Kara's characterization is we're given like half a note of Man of Steel bullet points for her in this movie. She's not in a whole lot, and she doesn't have a whole lot to do. I don't know. What did you think, Tucker? Because you mentioned that you like both of them.
I do. I think that she is underutilized, and I'll never pretend that that's not the case. But I think she absolutely did the best with the time and role that she was given. I think that learning a little bit about the expanded Kryptonian lore, which you could have intuited if you know a thing or two about comic books, but seeing her role as an alternate Kryptonian character, the only Kryptonian on Earth that has been experimented on for the entirety of her life and doesn't trust humans and doesn't quite understand her place or the extent of her abilities or what she can do to sort of fight back. I really liked watching the small character arc that she has that is coming to the realization that even though she has been treated like an experimented rat for her entire life, that there are people that are caring enough about others that it's worth putting in the effort to try and save them. And so seeing her in her costume is the fucking best. That's a great goddamn costume. I think she looks great in it. I think that some of the effects on her are actually done surprisingly well. When the sun hits her and her skin like flins up again, I'm like, oh, whoa, what the fuck? That was a great effect. And seeing her sort of confused and then coming back and apply and lifting up Barry into the sky, I'm like, these are like incredible images, and this character is in a very interesting place, and I think her dynamic with the berries is interesting enough to even though she's only in it for like, I don't know, let's say 10 minutes of screen time. That might be generous or it might be low, I have no fucking clue. I think that she's an integral enough part of this movie for the lore of this world, which I found very fascinating, for a different take on a super character that we have only seen once before. It was a really long time ago, so basically it's entirely fresh. I thought that her inclusion was integral and very interesting as a part of this.
Again, I'll just say that she's not given anything to do, I feel, and her mini arc, as you said, of like learning to love humans again happens so fast. It happens in the blink of an eye. It goes by at the speed of light, Tucker. Because she like flies to go confront Zod in the desert, sees him kill a bunch of people. And then we cut away to Barry 1 trying to get his powers back, and she's just back. We don't see that pivot happen. We don't see why it happens. We don't see what changes her mind. Like, she flies away from that conversation with Barry 2 after he says, like, hey, people are cool. And she's like, they're not my people. I don't give a fuck. And then she goes see some people get murdered, and she's like, damn.
They died.
Damn.
I guess.
So that's the thing for me. And
I think that the moment that really sells, or is supposed to be the moment that sells her as, okay, there are people worth fighting for, is actually Barry 1 being fucking emaciated and lightning struck and fucking dead. She's like, holy shit, this guy is like basically on the edge of fucking
But then
life
also I question
to save others.
Why she came back in the first place.
Yeah, that could not fucking be. Could not.
We need to wrap it up here because I have a couple other things. Why is Michael Keaton the one to explain all the multiverse stuff? I found that's another thing of the plot like that I found tedious. There's like we know multiverse. Why is Ezra Miller?
I thought it was a great way to describe it. To be honest.
The spaghetti.
And Yeah, no, I thought that was I thought it was really well done. I thought it was a good scene. And a very interesting metaphor that I hadn't considered before. But it maybe reading into it, okay, fucking Bruce Wayne has studied some shit.
My main thing is that it felt so like tedious when we as an audience and they as creators of the film should recognize that things have progressed past the point when they started making this movie. The cultural understanding of multiverse and superheroes is far more advanced, and we don't need to do 30 minutes of this movie of Barry being like, where am I? What's going on? I don't understand everything.
I disagree with that. I think that it's very important to have the first time the multiverse has been used in the DC universe, and the first time these characters have experienced those sort of problems. They have to be shown as confused, or else it'll feel really fucking weird. If Barry Allen just appeared in the other universe, like, this is another universe, I know what to do, because you've seen universe movies before. It's like, no, hold on, that doesn't make any sense in the context of him as a character, or this universe, or these creators making a movie like this, implying that we shouldn't show other elements of a story integral to this story because you've seen it before. I don't think
I'm not necessarily saying that. I'm saying that we can have Barry figuring it out, but we don't need to make it so prolonged and so tedious. Like even in like things like No Way Home or Into the Spider-Verse, it's done far more. It's done in the truncated fashion where we're just firing this information to the audience and we pick it up because we're not stupid. Even though at those times maybe those were the first times we were being introduced to multiverse stuff as a concept in superhero movies, but it was just written in a far more concise way, and we weren't weighed down like this scene. Particularly where we are in the room with all Barry 2's roommates, and they're talking about Eric Stoltz is Back to the Future. Hey, did you know Eric Stoltz was going to be in Back to the Future? Hey, Tucker, did you know that Eric Stoltz was going to be in Back to the Future? That scene in particular gave me a headache because of how it was edited, how everyone was so fucking annoying, and how every line delivery was just so off-putting. And speaking of off-putting, the look of this movie.
Okay. I was going to push back on that, but I guess we'll just.
The look of the film is awful. It looks awful.
I would say the key word here is inconsistent, because there are some of the worst CGI effects I've ever seen applied in a movie. I think I can draw into conversation my first draft sort of thing. It's like, okay, this looks pretty good for you. You've got another couple years to work on this and like polish it up and make it feel realistic and have to make things have weight. Like, you're getting the bare bones here. And unfortunately, most of that comes across in the Chrono Ball stuff, which I think we already talked about being rubbery and strange and off-putting. And even though it's an incredibly cool concept, I think, frankly, the visual idea of the Chrono Ball with all the different futures like spinning around and there being this like going off into infinity, I think it's awesome. It's just not done well. And I think that applies to most of the CGI effects here. Conceptually, I think the action is really interesting. I think that, especially in that last battle, and the first sequence, I think, is actually just well done across the board. I thought it was a great opening action sequence. But the CGI is so hit or miss that you can be watching a moment. Like, I think in close-up, a lot of the CGI effects here are very, very well done. I think that the lightning effects around Barry, there's this moment when he gets hit by lightning. And it's like, so he's like, and there's lightning going. It's like, oh, well, hold on. You can do really good CGI effects. The CGI of having two Barrys next to each other, seamless. Looks fucking awesome. No problems with that at all. But then Sasha Kaye gets her powers and she's like, whoop, whoop. She's like floating in the scene. And people are like, PS2 fucking cutscene looking ass. Zod and his ships are landing. I'm like, this is an opening cutscene for a game that came out in 2006. What the fuck are you doing?
I think it looks pretty across the board, pretty awful. I think there's an exception or two, and conceptually, sure, there's an exception or two. But, like, this is a funny comparison I made to Quantumania coming out of the theater, that at least Quantumania had the shame to, like, just lower the brightness on everything so you couldn't really see it. This, I see, especially the third act, is just bright as day. We get to look at everything in all of its emptiness and rubberiness and just really feel it all in your face. Speaking of in your face, I feel like the film oftentimes goes out of its way to make Ezra Miller look awful, just frame them poorly, especially when we're in it can be in Speed Force stuff, it can be in dialogue scenes, it can be wherever. Like, a lot of times in Speed Force stuff, we're like a low angle on Ezra Miller's face, and their face is like, their eyes are bugging, and they're like looking up like this. I'm like, why are we shooting our main character like this? Or when they are just in a dialogue scene, the camera is often way too close to them. Again, it's the eyes bugging thing. They are like shaking their head. They're fervently like screaming into the camera. It's like, let's back off a second and let's take a moment to think about the images that we're crafting here. I think across the board it looks pretty bad, but I don't know. I think I talked about every element of the film as we sort of wrap it up here. I think it's poorly written. I don't think Ezra Miller is very good. I think a lot of times their line delivery is super whiny, and when they're trying to do the emotional stuff, it comes across weird. Their line delivery in that scene with their mother is something like, "Don't forget the tomatoes. I love you. I love
that was
you,
funny.
Mom."
Yeah.
I'm like, why are we talking like this? I didn't think any character was very well done, and for that reason, I'm gonna give The Flash, I don't know, a 2.5 out of 10.
Okay, we're gonna be very different scores on this. I think that was implied by our conversation here because I disagree on almost every front. I think that this is one of the best written characters we've ever gotten in the DCU. I think this is probably the best performance we've ever gotten in the DCU. I think the side characters and the multiverse stuff and the balance between introducing multiverse elements and crazy sci-fi shit was balanced very well with, I think, a compelling emotional core of the progression of Barry Allen, learning about his life, introducing us to the Flash. The action and the CGI stuff, I think conceptually is very interesting. I point to that first moment when he runs and the speed is going boom, which you mentioned at the beginning, or the fucking awesome bat plane, best bat plane ever on the goddamn silver screen that it has a core that the wings spin around. I'm like, oh my god. And I think that some of the moments of the Flash working together and using lightning bolts and like pushing off of one another, I'm like, these are spectacle moments, the likes of which the DCU has never attempted. But unfortunately, it's held back by some forced multiverse moments that we talked about, by probably the worst CGI in a modern superhero movie, that even bringing into conversation Quantumania, which I think does look better than this movie. Those, I think, though, are blemishes on an otherwise incredibly solid film. I found the writing, the character work, the acting, the concepts, the world to be very well fleshed out, very well done, and I'm interested to see what they do with this, because I think it is possible that some of these elements do continue on in the future. And it's my favorite part of the DCU that James Gunn didn't create. So from that lens, I'm very pleased with this movie. I had a great time watching it, and we'll see how it does
your score
at the box office. 7.7 out of 10. Great fucking movie. Great fucking movie. We will see you guys for Blue Beetle in a couple of months when we get to another one of these goddamn superhero movies.